All right, everybody, Adam back with another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast, and talking today with Kevin Guillen from Wilderness Athlete. The first time that I ever encountered anything from Wilderness Athlete was through the Train to Hunt. Some Tim Buno, Curtis Zabel, a few of the guests that we've had on over the years. One thing, and we're going to talk about it. So Curtis does behind the bow. So his cinematography, his films are just incredible, like a super high level everything, the way he does his films, the way he hunts. And I think if you were to go on their website, if it's still up, like he wrote a blog post after training to hunt, after participating in that and kind of getting his butt kicked, but he really dove hard into the health and wellness and all that stuff. And he was talking about, as Midwesterners, as we go into our season, and he's from Wisconsin, we drive around and look for deer all day, and we're living out of gas stations. We're eating just absolute garbage. And then we talked about that when I was down in Ohio with the Latitude guys, about Alex saying, he usually has a smoothie every morning and all this stuff. And now we're just, eating at the bar and having some drinks and all that stuff. So we're going to talk to Kevin today and kind of figure out how some of this supplementation, like how much of it's a gimmick, how much of it is actually necessary. And then along with that, like how can we change our nutritional needs, whether it's through supplementation or just like small food choices or whatever, during the season to help us, kind of recover better, be better hunters, and kind of be more on top of our game. With all of that, how are you doing today, Kevin?
I'm doing great, Adam. Yeah, thanks for having me on. We're super busy around here these days, so that's pretty common for the hunting industry this time of year. It's kind of like our Super Bowl, so to speak. And we have a couple of other sister companies that we work in all of the same team, outdoorsmen and Western hunters. So it's a lot going on around here, all hands on deck. But I'm great, man. Feeling good, ready for the first hunt of my season isn't for some time. I might get out for over the counter archery here in Arizona in a week or so, but I don't have an actual tag. I'm going to Kodiak in November, and then I've got a rifle deer tag here in Arizona in December. So it's kind of hurry up and wait for me right now.
So for that, do you like draw straws working in an outdoors company like that? For being in Arizona, you think of it as a trophy elk state, but you shoot going to Kodiak and then a
Yeah.
rifle elk tag and stuff like that, but
hmm
not having a tag until December. Is it like, okay, well, now Kevin has to work all of September while we get to hunt, or how does that work there?
No, we have a really great, um, you know, environment here. To be honest with you, we all actually have unlimited vacation. Everybody in all of our companies has unlimited vacation. Caveat to that is, you've got to get your job done. You've got to communicate with your teammates, plan your schedules, so there's no gaps and holes. And what that whole approach does is it really just puts the responsibility on you to make sure that the job's getting done. If you want to take off for 2 or 3 weeks in the fall, fine, but make sure your ducks are in a row and you've planned accordingly with who's covering your job responsibilities and making sure there's coverage on phones for certain businesses. With Wilderness Athlete specifically, it hasn't really been that big of an issue. We have a really awesome team. We all wear a lot of hats, and the beauty of that is that we can cover each other and make sure the job's getting done. Almost all of us can do someone else's job with the expectation of some specialized things, graphic design and things of that nature. But we work pretty tightly together. We all take a lot of ownership over the work we do and the products and the company that we run. So we don't really have to worry too much about like shifts. We communicate, we plan, and we just make it happen.
So this time of year in Arizona, like what is it like to get a tag? We talked about this a little bit before, like for a resident versus non-resident, because for us, it might be 10 years to get a trophy unit, 20 years, sometimes. And I was just
Yeah.
talking to somebody who drew a tag somewhere like that, New Mexico, maybe it was Arizona, but
Hmm.
it was 20 years, and he figured that he had $2,500 into points to just get to that. So what is it
Yeah.
like for a resident?
Uh, I mean, it's better, but not a whole lot better when you're talking about elk hunting. I mean, I talk to guys every year, residents, lifelong residents, who are still in that 10 to 15 point range, and they haven't drawn that tag they want. And it's getting even more challenging, because the number of non-residents and residents that are applying for these hunts is increasing every year. So, um, you know, elk is definitely kind of, I would say elk and antelope and obviously sheep, but those are just kind of the outliers when it comes to like those tags that take either a lot of luck or just a lot of points to draw. The good units. With elk, there are some great opportunities if you're willing to do if you're willing to hunt not in the rut. Like if you want to hunt late season with a bow, which is pretty challenging in a lot of ways. It takes a lot of scouting, a lot of work, a lot of boot time. But those tags can be had with much more reasonable points. That's actually the only tag I've ever had. I drew it with 3 points. It was so it's like late November. So bulls are not rutting. Um, the hunt's incredibly weather dependent, and you're essentially hunting them like you would be hunting deer. But it's a chance to get in the field. Have a tag in your pocket. So if you're one of those guys who's got the preparation and you've got the skill and the nuts to go do it, then the opportunities are there for sure.
So if it's that tough, difficult of a hunt, and the prime time tags are difficult to draw, what other hunting opportunities are there for you in Arizona, or is that why you're traveling out of state?
No, no, there's a lot. I mean, so for deer, one of the biggest, I think the most attractive things about Arizona, which is no secret these days, is our over-the-counter seasons for archery deer. We've got August, that it starts late August, goes into like mid-September. That's one season that's all over-the-counter archery deer. It picks up again in late December, and then all of January pretty much is open too for the following year. So it's really advantageous for archery hunters. I think it was last year. Maybe a year before that they began a quota though. So there are units, and every unit has a quota. And once a certain number of deer are killed in that unit, the unit's shut down. So it definitely puts more uh, restrictions on, not restrictions, but you find some units that are really high deer density units, and you get a lot of guys, of course, that are hunting those units. You get a lot of guys that are shooting little forked horn deer, and those quotas get met really fast. So it just kind of depends on what units you're hunting, but the opportunity is still there. So you can absolutely still get out. We've got awesome like javelina hunts every year. You can do with your bow and rifle. Um, Great bird hunting too. So I mean, it's a very game rich state and a lot of opportunity in the state. I think the State Department does a really good job, in my opinion, of making sure there is opportunity out there for all different demographics and species and such.
And so is that over the counter deer tags? And I'm assuming that's mule deer.
And Coues deer and whitetail, yeah. And not all units are open during that. Most are, but there are certain units that are not open for the over the counter season. However, there are some units you probably don't want to go hunt at this time of year, because in August, even early September, you're bound to be hunting in 105 to 115 degree days with monsoons and rattlesnakes, and it's definitely not a hunt for the faint of heart. So typically the guys that are the most successful are the guys that have put in some time scouting. They don't have to waste a lot of time out there. But yeah, It's all over the counter for archery, and you can do Coues deer or mule deer.
And then in your area there, like
Hmm.
latitudinally, longitudinally, whatever, where you fall, like where does the rut kick in for deer, and then is it the same for elk as it would be like say in Colorado?
Um, it seems to be a moving target and I don't claim to be an expert on this. It seems like, the rut when you're looking at deer is always in that January time frame. It seems some years you will see some early rut activity, typically from mule deer sometimes. Again, it's always kind of a moving target, but typically you're always looking at that January time frame. Sometimes late January, sometimes it's really late January before the rut gets going. I've seen that happen a few years ago. I was hunting in like mid-January, and I thought, man, we're going to be in the thick of seeing bucks rutting, and you didn't see it. It just wasn't going on. And just from what I was hearing from guys, it was late, whether that be moon cycles, weather conditions, weather patterns. There's a lot of different voodoo and things that go on with that. Elk, I know I think last year and the year before that too, a lot of guys were saying they're very late starting in the rut, but you're looking at September, for sure is maybe late August at the earliest. But I think last year I was hearing a lot of guys say that the rut hadn't really kicked in until mid-September, which is not not ideal for a lot of guys. When you set a chunk of time to be in the field for a week, and maybe the rut doesn't really start till like the last day of your hunt. So um that's why it's hunting, man. I mean, we can't fit our watches to some of these things for sure.
Well, I just think for us in the Midwest, we always think of, our rut being, November. So like as
Hmm.
you would think, okay, everybody that elk hunts is like, okay, is it September yet? Is it September yet? Like
Hmm.
for the whitetail hunter in the Midwest, it's November. And then as you get down further south, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, it's in that January time frame, stuff like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
And especially it's interesting for you to say that about mule deer. And I guess it would be different if you were hunting them with a rifle than a bow, I would assume, because showing my like complete lack of understanding of mule deer hunting, everything that it seems like that I've ever seen is early season like spot and stalk mule deer hunting. So that does not line up with like rut hunting. That
Yeah.
that would be like the worst thing ever, right? Because if you're gonna
Yeah.
you're gonna go across the drainage, I mean, unless he's locked down with a doe or something, you know, these deer, like, whitetail deer anyway, are completely just moving all over. So with a mule deer, how does that work?
Uh, and I can't speak from a guy who has a ton of experience hunting mule deer. Ever since I've lived in Arizona, Coues deer are really what I've always wanted to hunt. I've spent a fair amount of time around mule deer and like black-tailed deer out in the west, like in the coast, and they behave pretty similarly. They're definitely, I mean, whitetail like Coues deer are far more cryptic. They're a lot more precarious about the decisions they make when they come out to feed and where they drink and watering and patterning deer, whitetail deer is much harder than mule deer. Mule deer tend to stick to their routines, their patterns. They're just a bit more bold. Um, they do move around a hell of a lot more. Mule deer migrate and they travel in their corridors in their general routines a great deal more in distance, whereas whitetail, famously live in a very, very small home range. But you're also talking about a deer that's half the size. And they're also able to just basically curl up underneath a bush and disappear. I mean, we call them the gray ghost for a reason, because you could be looking at them 1 second and they take a step and a half in one direction and you can't see them. They're just very, very clever that way. I personally enjoy hunting whitetail because they're just such a challenge to even find with your glass, and they're such a cool animal to watch. I mean, nothing against mule deer; they're awesome too, but they're a little bit more of a they're just a I don't know. It's hard to. I don't want to like. They're just a little bit more bold, and they tend to give you that opportunity for a bit longer. There's you'll tend to find mule deer in bigger herds too, bigger groups. So they can be a bit easier to find in that regard. But by that same token, if you're archery hunting or even rifle hunting in some circumstances, that makes it more challenging. You've got 8 times, 10 times as many pairs of eyes looking at you and picking up all your movements. Whereas, Coues deer, if you've got a lonely buck or just one or two deer, you don't have as many eyes and ears and noses to contend with. So they definitely both have their trade-offs. And as you would imagine, especially in Arizona, like you get people that are just diehard Coues deer hunters, and they love to give a hard time to guys who are shooting mule deers, and then vice versa. So it's really just about what you enjoy spending your time doing. The type of country you hunt them in is can be different too. Mule deer tend to be in more of the low, flat, rolling hill grounds, and Coues deer you can find in some of the gnarliest, rockiest stuff. So it's definitely a trade-off.
Yeah, I really haven't. And I, when you had mentioned like just the deer hunting, I think, whitetail deer, mule deer, blacktail deer, and then like Coues deer, I don't even think registered to us here in the Midwest is like a real
I should
thing.
call, I should just call it a Western whitetail. That's what
Yeah.
I mean. That's what it is. It really is, and they are essentially just a miniaturized version of, the white, the whitetail you guys are used to seeing in the Midwest. Because I mean, deer you guys shoot, they get pretty damn big, right? I mean, you can see them in the winter, 300 pounds sometimes. I've heard.
That would be, I think, more in like the like Canada stuff. I mean, like
Hmm.
my dad's killed one in the UP of Michigan here, that was the Upper Peninsula, that was like 200 pounds dressed after it hung for 7 days. Um,
Wow.
I've killed them that was like 187 after a couple days hanging
Hmm.
dressed. But when you get up to like Maine and like up in those northern like big woods areas, those guys are looking for those 300-pound deer,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, most of, I mean, our deer are bigger than Florida deer, Texas deer, as far as body wise and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I've never
Yeah.
shot anything like 300 pounds, but when you
Yeah.
when you shoot one that's 200 pounds, that's a lot. And it's
That's a
interesting.
lot.
My brother's killed mule deer out in South Dakota that was like over 200, and he said
Hmm.
just body size, body type is just way different than even what we're
Yeah.
used to seeing here. So
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. I mean, you kind of see that same trend all over um, the country. Obviously, the further south you get, the warmer climate you get, and tends to be the smaller body size that is characteristic of the species there. So it has to do with heat dispersion and their ability to manage those temperatures and that climate. So in general, like the animals like the deer we see here tend to be a magnitude or two smaller than what you see as you go north. I mean, I think the first and second whitetail Coues deer that I shot here in Arizona were, I mean, when I got up to them, I was like, holy shit, that's a small deer. I mean, they were mature deer and all that, but the second one I shot, actually, I mean, if I had to guess on the hoof, he was maybe 105 pounds.
Gosh.
You know, and I mean, from nose to ass, about yay big, and um, but full representation of a mature animal. It's a nice 3x3. It was a great looking deer, gorgeous. I mean, they're very pretty deer. They're small, and so yeah, like when you see them up close, you do realize like, man, no wonder it took me forever to find these things. It just they can crawl under a bush literally, and you won't see them.
That's wild. I don't know. It's when around here you look at deer and even through the woods. Like I remember being a kid watching deer, and then you'd see one and you're like, man, that's a really long deer. And then all of a sudden
Hmm.
it's rack would pop up and you're like, okay, now we're talking. You can look at like the noses on these deer too to see just how like the size.
Sure.
Um it's pretty crazy. But again, I don't think that here in the Midwest, like we even register Coues deer as like a target species
Yeah.
unless you're like some sort of crazy, you know, trying to check off a list of big game
Yeah.
animals or something like that. So
Yeah.
what are you
No,
going
it makes
to
sense.
Kodiak for? What are you hunting up there?
Sitka blacktail. Yeah, we're gonna hunt on Kodiak Island. I'm super excited. It's been a bucket list hunt for me for years. So it's a float type of hunt where we're gonna be on a basically a yacht, so to speak, in the bay, and then we get taken off onto the island every day on a skiff, hunt all day as long as we can. And my understanding too from like my father-in-law and all the other guys I know that I'm going with that have hunted there several times before. The Sitka deer, I mean, they are very like similar in body size. They're not like these very dominant sized deer, but just because of the lack of predators they have on that island, obviously just Kodiak like bears are like their only predator really, and hunters, they they're not nearly as like skittish. So I'm super excited. It's going to be an adventure, like the whole thing, like the traveling to get there, dealing with some of the world's largest bears, being on the same island as them, hunting in Alaska for me for the first time. It's all going to be a pretty awesome adventure.
It's pretty wild. I don't know. I was just telling somebody yesterday about like why they were like, oh, I want to hunt Alaska. I want to do this. And I'm like, I think I would go there to hunt. Like I've seen these guys that do it. Some kind of like local guys. One of the guys shoots for bear. He's a Michigan guy. They go up there and they shoot moose with traditional gear, and
Oh, cool.
bears. They like walk up and down the creeks and shoot these black bears that, you know, 10 yards or something like that. Like, I think that would be super cool. We were talking about like, would you want to do like a $30,000 sheep hunt or something like that? And I mean, I don't know. I think our um, listener, I think our, I don't know, maybe our egos are like, okay, well, we want to do, public land. We want to try and do things like the quote unquote hard way, make it harder or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, but I can tell you, I did a first rifle elk hunt in Colorado, like where we
Hmm.
went through an outfitter, did a spike camp and went in on horseback, and they just dropped us off. And I hunted the first 4 days of the hunt with my bow, and I didn't even bring a rifle. I told them I'm just going to borrow somebody's rifle that kills an elk, and I'm going to kill one on the last day. And that's what I did. It was really fun. I enjoy like a backpack elk hunt, and like I would love we've not killed an elk that way. We've
Yeah.
we've we've encountered elk, but just haven't been successful. And
Hmm.
that camp, that experience, like you can completely throw like the ego and all that other stuff out of the way if you just really enjoyed the hunt. And so
Sure.
I'm excited for you to go out there and do that, and especially with family and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's gonna be great.
Yeah. No, and I'm on the same page as you. I mean, we don't do outfitted hunts. We don't do guided hunts. This isn't an outfitted hunt. You
You just have
hire
a
a
yacht or what?
no, so it's a transporter. So they're transporters. They're not guides. They literally can't tell you anything about where good deer hunting is or anything like that. Their only job is to take you from that boat to the island to go hunt. But once you're on the island, you're entirely on your own. I mean, there is definitely a bit of they cook for you on the yacht and all that. I guess years ago, a few years ago, when Chris went on the island for the first time for this hunt, they camped on the island, and I wouldn't really want to have any part of that. Sleeping along, 1,200 pound bears, that doesn't sound all that fun to me. So sleeping on a yacht seems a lot more comfortable. We can do some duck hunting and a little bit of fishing while we're on the boat too. Um, yeah, it's going to be super cool. It's going to be unlike anything I've ever done because everything else we do and everything else I've done is very much DIY, like what you said. It's all public land type hunting, and we make sure that and I think it kind of makes those moments where you do get to go get treated pretty nice on a hunt like that. It makes it even more special because you're used to doing everything your damn self and doing it the hard way. So it's kind of nice to spoil yourself every now and then.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. So we, as you're going out there and we're talking about, your 115-degree heat and stuff in Arizona, I think if guys are listening to this right now and they're saying, okay, well, I'm about ready to go for my elk hunt. This is what I probably should get my butt in gear. They're too late, right? So
Yeah.
for that, we automatically think of like Midwest guy going out west. Oh, I need to train. I need to do this. When we see these uh train to hunt events and stuff like that, there's a big narrative around like Midwest guys, I would say that unless you're going out west, like you don't have to be in shape to kill whitetail deer, and a lot of especially Michigan, just got to get my buck guy, rifle hunter, just go to the stand every day, drink a whole bunch of beer, get up in the morning,
Yeah.
maybe don't get up in the morning, maybe just hunt the evenings, deer
Yeah.
camp type stuff. Like you don't have to be in shape to do that. You don't have to
Hmm.
train. And I think that that's the narrative. We think of all the supplementation, all of this stuff, um, for the elk hunter, for the Western hunter, for we're
Yeah.
going out to even your Alaska hunt, I would say, like if you're going to spend a bunch of money, take a bunch of time and you're going to go, but I think we take that for granted from a
Hmm.
whitetail hunter standpoint. And even like with me, traveling out of state to go hunt a week in Ohio, or this year is going to be Kansas, stuff like that. I don't
Right.
I'll buy all the gear, I'll spend all the time, scouting and trying to make my hunt successful, and then I'll just eat like absolute garbage and
Right.
not plan for any of that. And after 3, 4, 5 days, especially depending on how far away you are from where you're hunting, how far you're going back,
Right.
it just drains you and you just feel like terrible. So what
Hmm.
can we do to either maybe change our mindset as Midwestern hunters and say, hey, some of this stuff maybe is important, and B,
Sure.
like how can we either change our diet or supplement our diet of fudge rounds and hot dogs from the gas station, breakfast pizza,
Yeah.
um, to make us feel better
Yeah.
as we're
Yeah.
hunting.
Sure. Yeah. Um, well, let's start with the mindset part of it, and because I think that's a super important part. It's incredibly important, and it's something I talk to people about near constantly because like what you're talking about with kind of the mindset between the Midwestern guy and then the Western guy. It's a lot of misinformation and a misconception. And I'm going to forget the statistic, but we early in the days of Wilderness Athlete, we started in the Midwest. Mark Paulson, who's founded this company, he started it in Minnesota, and he's a Midwestern guy. And in the early days, I mean, we're a 20-year-old company. Western hunting, like the way we know it now, wasn't nearly as well developed as the Midwestern market. I mean, there's just far more hunting tags and states and land and everything in the Midwest. So we dealt with it a lot more often. But the statistic that I was thinking of always stuck with me, and it had to do with the number of men who are suffering heart attacks on opening day of deer season in Midwestern states, not because they had to climb up some crazy mountain or because they had to keep up with a rutting elk or anything like that. But literally the shock to the system that was happening when they'd shoot a deer and then have to drag it, even if it was only a couple hundred yards out of the woods. If you've ever dragged anything, dead weight, it's one of the hardest things to do. But when you looked at the type of person that was suffering these heart attacks, it was kind of emblematic of the way a lot of people, and I'm not going to say nowadays, but at the time, or maybe even still presently, are living is very sedentary, not having much conditioning. The heart doesn't get stressed too often. Um, there really isn't much structure around diet and exercise. But then all of a sudden, opening day, adrenaline's pumping, you shoot a deer, and now you got to drag that thing, and your heart rate, which has probably rarely raised above 150, is now 180 plus. And depending on your conditioning and your age and all that, that's where a lot of guys are having heart attacks. and that's improved. There's a lot more thought and intention and awareness these days with even folks all over the damn country with how to take care of yourself and how to eat better. But I think the idea that just because you're hunting in flat ground and you're sitting in a tree stand and you're not climbing mountains means that you don't need to be in good shape. Just you're missing an opportunity, because what we, obviously our company, we're positioned as we want people to take their health seriously. I mean, what we think is that the most important piece of equipment that any of us own is our own bodies. We can have the nicest bow, best binoculars, best rifle, best clothes and pack, but if we can't go when we need to go, then what the hell's the point? What does it all mean if you can't make that shot because you can't even hold still, or you're out of breath, or you don't feel good? None of it makes a difference. And then on the other side, the way I think about it, the way I look about it, what motivates me on a pretty constant basis is just the idea that I know if I take care of myself now and I put in a little bit of effort now, I'm going to get 2, 3, 4, 5 more hunting seasons out of my life. I love hunting more than damn anything else in my life, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners do too. And you've all met people whose hunting careers get cut short, really short, whether it's because their knees fail them because they've been spending years carrying around too much weight. They start having health complications that get expensive, and you just don't feel good enough to go out and be in the wilderness. Or God forbid, something worse happens, some, very catastrophic medical event. So it's always about, adding longevity to my life, adding longevity to my lifestyle. I want to be able to, I just had a 10-month-old, I have a 10-month-old girl, and I don't know yet if she's going to grow up to be a hunter or not, but if she is, I want to spend as much time as humanly possible in the outdoors with her. And so whether you're in the West or you're in the Midwest or the East Coast, those are things we can't escape. It's time. So, but we all can do something about the amount of the quality of our life and the quality of time that we have. So losing weight, making your conditioning, your heart conditioning, your legs, all that kind of stuff makes a difference. But I think to your other question, which is really a great question, because I know a lot of people, you always kind of get stuck where it's like, well, where do I get started? How do I change the routines I'm in or the lifestyle that I've been living for a long time? It can be overwhelming. The way I look at it, and I have this conversation with people a lot in my personal life, people that need some advice, customers that call. This is not a event like getting in shape for hunting. It's not an event, and I think our culture, we've really gotten swept away with this mindset that like we do this short program and then we'll be good for beach season. We do this short program, we'll lose the weight. This is a lifestyle, and so we don't need to go from 0 to 100 really quick. We need to make incremental, lasting changes one day at a time, and really start to wrap our minds around the idea that living a healthier lifestyle, making better dietary choices, making the decision to engage in some form of activity routine, whether it's just walking around the neighborhood or maybe lifting weights again. That's not like something we're just going to do for a short period of time so we feel better this hunting season. That's just something we're going to do for the rest of our life. That's our lifestyle. And the longer we can do that, the more consistency we can have with that, it becomes this really healthy cascading effect where you start to make better decisions, not because they're hard, but because you choose to. You feel better when you eat good food, nutritious food. You feel better when it comes to stress and energy when you exercise every day, and it becomes more effortless. So, I guess the high level answer to that question is, where do we get started when we want to improve the way we feel? Get started with making one decision better today than you made yesterday. And there's always that opportunity, whether it's what you're eating, or if you're standing at your desk versus sitting all day, or if you decide to go for a walk after dinner, or before you go to work, or doing some push-ups, or maybe you're a guy, man, I work out every day and I eat pretty damn good. Well, good for you. But I guarantee you there's probably something you could do better. And If you're that guy, you've already got a lot of things figured out, but most people don't. Most people are kind of stuck, and the longer you stay stuck, and I've been there too. I've been there. It can be pretty debilitating to feel that way, but you just got to start with one thing, and then two things, and just keep going. And pretty soon you look back and you realize you've made some pretty awesome changes.
But let's say that I am that guy and I'm super healthy and I'm work out all the time and I'm just like, but now I go to like a perfect example is this Kansas hunt. Like when I'm looking at these areas in Kansas, like when I looked on the Kansas website for like their DNR, and it was like, this is your unit. It said
Hmm.
this unit is this city is going to be the biggest city in your unit because it has a super Walmart. And
Hmm.
so when you're looking at, the 50-mile radius or whatever, your major metropolis is the super Walmart. So
Yeah.
I've heard you talk about it on other podcasts where you're like, okay, so you're a business guy and you go back and forth to work and all this stuff, and you're eating bad food because it's convenient, because it's time, because that's what you're doing.
Hmm.
Now you're in a situation where you're out there and you're you could say the same thing about elk hunting, I guess, but it's like whatever you have in your vehicle is like what you're going to eat, or when you
Yeah.
stop for fuel, that's where you're restocking uh your choice. So your choices on healthy
Yeah.
decisions there can be pretty slim. But on the other podcast that we had with the Latitude guys, Alex was saying like we need to bring stuff for smoothies or something, because he's like, I just always
Yeah.
feel like garbage. And I just
Yeah.
wonder from like a vitamin or like a micronutrient standpoint, like what can we be doing better,
Oh,
um,
right. Yeah.
to feel better, to not to feel
Oh,
like
sure.
garbage every time.
Yeah. One of the things that I love to do when I have long road trips packed, love and hate, I should say, is I pack a big tub or two tubs of our meal replacement shake. And also I'll bring like our green infusion, which is it's a powder that is packed with phytonutrients. Each scoop has 6 servings of fruits and vegetables in it. Also has some probiotics in it. Um, and then the meal replacement shake gives you 200 calories, really good balance of protein, carbs, and fat. And when you're on the road or you're in camp or you're, what have you, going to work, it's a much healthier alternative than your average gas station fast food type stuff. Um, and I think the bigger point is you got to start looking at your food choices and everything you put in your body with the question and the caveat: how is this going to give me energy? How does this propel me? What is this just calories for calories sake, or how quality are these calories? How are these going to help me get to where I'm going? um, and so when you start kind of focusing on the nutritional value of what you're eating, it becomes a little bit more clear that making decisions based on the quality and not the convenience or just the sheer presence of food, that's the better way to go. We make a lot of really awesome products that I think can help in those situations. Like I said, our meal replacement shake, our green infusion is awesome. It's a great way to balance a good, healthy gut microbiome. Really good digestive health is really what that's going to help with. Um, Micronutrients are incredibly important because when you're eating fast food or you're eating protein bars from the gas station or anything that's really a convenience food, you can pretty much guarantee that the micronutrient quality of that food is all but robbed. The micronutrients when I'm talking about like minerals, vitamins, um, all of those things that really are tough to even get out of a lot of vegetables these days because most of our soil has been over harvested and we don't have a whole lot of soil nutrients these days. Um, so a good multivitamin is always a great way to kind of fill in those gaps. And I think these become things that people have been talked to, and you hear people tell you about multivitamins for years. And there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's a lot of crappy multivitamins out there. There's a lot of snake oil. Multivitamins can be great. It really depends on the absorption rate of how well you're able to absorb what's in there. But ultimately, what you're going to be receiving from that type of routine of getting those quality macronutrients and filling in those micronutrients is healthy energy. And really, what that becomes is not just like energy, like caffeine energy, but better mental acuity, better recovery period, more focus. You're sharper mentally. You sleep better. Your metabolism's working better. So you're manufacturing your own energy at a more efficient rate, which I think is I'm always astonished how many people in this country are get so comfortable with feeling pretty shitty. They don't realize how good they could feel, but they've felt this way, eating this way, living this way for so long that operating down here at this level of energy and having this roller coaster of insulin spike and crash, that's just normal. And so they just expect that. They don't expect more. You give someone like that a healthier routine of diet and maybe a little exercise, but even just diet, um, it's awesome to see the light switch turn on and realize how good you can feel when you don't feel bloated, you don't struggle to digest everything that you eat, and you don't feel like taking a nap after every meal that you've overconsumed. Um, so yeah, the decisions when you're traveling for a hunt or whatever, really what it comes down to is planning. That's where we suffer. We don't plan. If we don't plan what we're going to eat and how we're going to eat and what we're going to eat, then you are going to be a slave to convenience. You're going to be a slave to the gas station. But when it comes to like Walmart, man, like I love Walmart. Like I went to a super Walmart last week and bought a bunch of stuff. You can still shop very well and do very well for yourself at a Walmart. You just got to shop smart, shop in the perimeter of the store, in the produce and the meats and the dairies. Once you start going down those middle aisles and you're going to see all the processed carbs, the processed sugars, the high preservative foods, the nutritional quality goes down. And not saying there's nothing in there that isn't viable, but in general, if you try to spend most of your time shopping your meats, your vegetables, and things of that nature, you'll be okay.
So you mentioned something in there. So I'm going to dive into that is the snake oil, right? So
Mm-hmm.
everybody here, like it doesn't matter if it's if we're talking about tree stands or saddles or arrows or whatever, everybody wants like the miracle. This is going to kill me, this deer. This is going to be this guy does it. And, everybody says, okay, well, if you're chasing weight, you should just lose some weight and then you'll be better and you'll be stronger and all
Yeah.
that stuff. But from a snake oil standpoint, it's really hard, I think, to, because so I'm trying to dance around this a little bit, but like I feel like there's every influencer out there has this greatest thing ever, and whether, especially like, man, if you were in like the fitness or the CrossFit space and you're looking at these guys and like this is what I take, this is the greatest thing, it's the best, but it might not be the best for Johnny on the couch, Midwest hunter. Like but maybe he doesn't need, tons of creatine and all sorts of other things, to kind of do what we're talking about. And then twice now, I've been to like these like nutrition shacks or like these people who like make these protein shakes and all this stuff for you. And it seems like everything that is in there is like Herbalife stuff, which I think is like a pyramid scheme, like a multi-level company. And I don't know if it's good or not, but that's the way that it reads to me as like in Amway. So I've heard you talk, and I've actually seen it, and it's been marketed to me. Like if I wanted to have like my own line of supplements, and if you were to look at like what the 4-hour work week, I mean, that's what Tim Ferriss says is like, get yourself a subscription based consumable company, and let it run. It's just that easy, just do that. And so there are white label, like you said, supplements out there where everything is the same, and I just slap my
Hmm.
face on it and I'm like, this is the Bowhunter Chronicles, you know,
You're right.
killer creatine, like it's the best, whatever, make some
Right.
money or not, but it's the same as Kevin's creatine over here, and his is the
Sure.
best, and it's all just the same stuff
Yeah.
relabeled. So as you're looking at this stuff, whether it's Wilderness Athlete or, there are a whole bunch of other ones that have way more marketing, that have like a bro culture around them, even in the
Yeah.
hunting space. Like when you're looking at it, what is it that you should be looking for, or what differentiates them?
Sure. Great question. I mean, that's kind of at the core of my job, in a sense, because it's something that is very confusing for customers. I don't blame you or anybody for feeling kind of just like this dilemma of like, well, what the hell? I don't like what I'm seeing here. How does this feel different from what they're saying? And you definitely don't like the image that every certain brand influencer is putting out there. The short answer to your question is to really, I think, me personally, is to dig into, and I know when I say dig, a lot of people are like, "Come on, man, I don't have time to dig into all the research for every company. I just want to be able to trust what I'm buying," and I get that. But it is something that I think to take seriously when you're talking about something you're going to put in your body. If you're going to talk about a bow or a camo company, you know, I don't know how much you need to trust it. You can see it. But when you're talking about something you're putting into your body and there's all sorts of processes and effects that happen internally, I think it's worth a little bit of research and digging into and asking some questions, at least asking questions and thinking about what it is that you're putting in your body. I always want to look at who is behind these products, who's behind the company, and can I trust them? And do they have anything to lose? Like, what do they have to lose? Um, like this very low barrier of entry environment of the supplement space, which is as you described. It really these days doesn't take a whole lot to start your own supplement company, other than the capital to purchase the LLC, get someone to do some graphic designing on a label, and make a purchase order. There's not a whole lot of skill needed beyond just money and some marketing talent or marketing knowledge. There is a lot of products out there that are available for people to buy, and whether they're good products or safe products, that's a different question. But I think you got to look at who's behind them. And I can only speak right now if I'm talking about Wilderness Athlete. Look at the people who founded this company. Look at the people who formulate these products. Look at the people who are behind these products and the reputations that. And I'm not talking about our influencers. I'm not talking about people who we sponsor and have been a part of our company for a long time. I'm talking about like Mark Paulson, who founded this company, and Rick Scheckenbach, who's our formulator, who's been one of the foremost formulators in the nutrition space for decades. And then Dr. Harry Preuss, who was the chair of our research and formulation board. He passed away 2 weeks ago, but he's one of the most published doctors, and in terms of medical researchers, clinical lab researchers in the nutrition space. If you just Google him, you'll be kind of overwhelmed with the amount of research that he's conducted on different nutrients, bodily functions, and things of that nature. Um, my point is, you begin to see like, well, there's some people with a lot of career and a lot of reputation putting their name behind this stuff, and what we formulate, what we develop, what we put forward, is a representation of that. We do a ton of testing. We do a lot of testing, not only in like what we put into our ingredients and how it makes us feel, but like testing just in terms of like the actual quality of the ingredients that we're using. Those are like, and most people are going to probably hear that and be like, well, that's a lot of work to do. Um, and then this is kind of where I'm going to speak out of two sides of my mouth. As much as I want every like person in the world and hunter to look at Wilderness Athlete as the supplement and the product for them, I know that that's just not the case. And if our brand and like our products don't resonate with you, and they don't motivate you to get your ass off the couch and don't motivate you to put in the work, then, and if there's somebody else that does, that's important, and you should do what's working for you. Um, there are products, I don't want people to take things that are unsafe, and so you got to kind of do your own research and label reading to make sure what's in it is what they actually say is in it. Ask some questions. But at the end of the day, our goal is to improve this whole community of hunters. We want people to be healthier. We want people to take their health seriously. We want people to enjoy the outdoors more and just enjoy life more, um, by any means necessary. And if that means that you're not shopping with us and you're buying other products and you're trying other stuff, then good. If it's working for you, then good. That's kind of the unfortunate nature that has created in this hunting industry, where you have influencers that are driving kind of like public opinion, and you kind of create these like this and them and like adversarial like look about, whether it's, the camo you wear, the optics you use, the weapons you're shooting. um, we're all kind of in this thing together, and especially when it comes to nutrition, our mission is that, and our goal is to improve the lives of our customers, but a step further is just to improve the lives of this community. So if there's something that another company is doing that really resonates with you and gets you to take your health more seriously, I'm not going to stop you. That's a good thing. That's a positive step.
So I posed this to some of the Patreons, and one of them asked about the very Midwestern deer camp. What about a hangover recovery? You're out at deer camp, you have too many sodas with the boys. What is the best hangover recovery?
Oh man, the go-to. So we actually just came out with a product a few months ago, called Rescue Hydrate. And so for the forever, like honestly, the best hangover remedy that I ever knew of was a Superman, which is our energy and focus and our hydrate and recover. You mix those together, and it makes you feel good as new. But we developed a new product called Rescue Hydration. We initially developed it for folks who are, I mean, really, they're already suffering heat stroke, heat illness. They are dehydrated and they're struggling to get out of the wilderness, or they're working and they've stopped sweating and they're really in a bad situation. But consequently, it also is very great for hangovers. We have some ingredients in there, like aloe vera gel powder, that really helps calm nausea and stomach like up uneasiness. Um, and typically, when you're hungover, your stomach doesn't feel like all that great. So you mix a hydrate and recover and a rescue hydration together, and shit, throw an energy and focus in there too. It's tested and proven. We test it all the time, how well it turns your day around. So it's yeah, that's a no brainer. That's kind of goes with us everywhere.
And then one of the other things that they had asked about was you have something for um, altitude sickness,
Hmm.
climatization, that sort of thing. Um,
Yeah.
but with that, like, kind of like, how does that work, or what is that actually doing? And then
Mhm.
along with that, is there something to prevent or avoid, altitude sickness and
Altitude.
or dehydration at altitude?
Yeah, altitude sickness is a very challenging like symptom to nail down and like thing to figure out. How Altitude Advantage, our product that helps with acclimatization and dealing with altitude sickness, how that works, is one of the key ingredients, like one of our highest active ingredients in there is called ginkgo biloba extract. It helps your body produce more red blood cells. Red blood cells are your key oxygen transporting cell. So by increasing the volume of red blood cells that are present, even by a small amount, you are able to increase the amount of oxygen that is transported through the body. I will say this, that altitude sickness is as evasive as, um, I mean, the common cold. You don't know when you're going to get it. You don't know if you're going to get it every time. there are people that I talk to that have been going to 8,000, 9,000 feet to hunt their whole life, and they feel great. They never get it. And then one day they do. There's a lot of things at play: hydration levels, your exposure to low oxygen density in the air, like how often you do it, your conditioning, your cardiovascular conditioning, that can play a role too. Um, One of the things that we always recommend when you're a guy who like lives in the flatland and you're going to go up to hunt at 8,000, 9,000 feet, hell, even 6,000 feet, you don't really know. I mean, typically most people get it around 7,500 to 8,000 feet, and then above that, you're almost like increasing your chances. I personally, and I know this sounds very specific, but there's a hike that we do every year. 8,100 feet always seems to be right where I feel it. And what I always tell folks when they're getting ready to do something like that is you take altitude advantage for 5 days prior to going up. So you get that ginkgo biloba in your system, the vitamin C, the vitamin E in your system. But you also start drinking Hydrate and Recover while you're climbing. So Hydrate and Recover has 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C. We have additional vitamin C in Altitude Advantage. Vitamin C is very good at drawing fluids and electrolytes into your soft tissues. And one of the more common symptoms of altitude sickness is hypoxic cramps and hypoxic soreness. So hypoxia is literally just means a lack of oxygen. And by being able to deliver more fluids to certain areas, you're not going to feel as much of that like stiff joint stiffness. It can help with headaches for sure, and it tends to be a downward spiral because you start to feel nauseous, you start to feel not great, you stop wanting to drink very as much as you normally do when you're getting sick, and then you get dehydrated, and that only compounds the symptoms of altitude sickness. So having a really good balance of electrolytes in your system as well as fluids is definitely very, very helpful. But at the end of the day, you have to understand that it is somewhat of it's an unavoidable thing for some people. You're going to deal with some form of feeling different. Altitude Advantage does a great job at helping you feel as normal as possible. For some people, I mean, it works like I feel like a totally normal person, and that's what the goal is, and that's great. Other people, it's just going to, diminish their symptoms in a natural way. If you're someone who really struggles with altitude sickness, it and you're afraid of it, like where you get vertigo or you get nauseous to the point where you're throwing up, I would look into some more drastic means, prescriptive means. The doctors, they have some, I think Diamox is one that they can prescribe, and there's some other things, especially if you're going to like 10, 12,000 feet where the stakes are just higher. The higher you go up, the less dense oxygen in the environment that's available. But that being said, we sell a lot of Altitude Advantage, and you would be surprised how often guys will call, they'll forget it, and they'll have us like overnight it and spend a lot of money to have us overnight it to some small town or wherever it's nearby where they're hunting, because it can save your hunt, and if you're not prepared for that, you ought to be. And this is kind of a warning to do so, because for a lot of these hunts, we don't get but 4 or 5 days to do it, maybe a week, and we spend all year saving up for it, planning it. Maybe it's a tag we took 10 years to draw. You don't want to spend half that hunt or more in your tent or just feeling like shit. You want to kind of have a good insurance policy and just do everything you can to make yourself feel as normal as possible. So, some other things you could potentially do, and I know it's not always an option, but if you can try to climb elevation in a more regimented, slow manner, like if you guys are ultimately base camp is 10,000 feet, maybe try to spend a night on the way up, spend a night halfway up. And that's not always possible. I mean, we're trying to get to camp and start hunting as soon as possible. So I get it, but gradually climbing in altitude is definitely a better way to go for your system. It allows it to adjust more naturally rather than just rapidly. All of a sudden, you're going from 4,000 feet to 9,000 feet. That can be pretty jarring. But staying hydrated, being in good shape is always going to help. Absolutely.
Yeah, those are the big questions that I got from them, and I think you sent me both of those, Hydrate and Recover and the and the energy one. So I'm
Yeah, yeah.
actually on this weekend here. I'm on the board for this craft beer festival. So like the light bulb went off. I'm like, I am definitely going to try this. We're going to make
Yeah,
sure to get some feedback there. So
yeah,
I
yeah.
appreciate that.
No, if you need it, man, go drink one right before you go to bed, and then another one when you wake up. It'll like you'll be in good shape.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah,
So one thing before we close out that we
yeah.
usually ask, and like my co-host is he's building the house and he's super busy. So he hasn't been on here and I've been forgetting to ask, but what is your bow setup?
My bow setup. I've got a Hoy 30-foot carbon defiant, so I think it's the 34 axle to axle. It's like a 4 or 5 year old bow, I think. Um, I love it, man, and I shoot my bow less than I used to, and not as much as I want to now. But every time I'm thinking I get that itch to maybe upgrade into one of the new red works or just trying a new bow, I then pick up my bow and I shoot lights out, and I realized, why am I going to fix it if it's broken? You know, I mean, if it ain't broken, like it shoots great. Um, it's a great bow. I love it.
And then what are you shooting for? Like a sight and arrow setup, broadheads, all that.
It's a HHA. I think it's their. I want to say it's their Kingpin. I believe is the site. Right now, actually, I'm still shooting like deep six full metal jackets. Those are I have a new set of arrows that I need to completely set up my bow for, just because the deep six I know is just something that's kind of getting phased out. My broadhead selection isn't as good. Um, but I've really been liking. I shot actually back in January. I shot a mountain lion with my bow, and I chose to use a fixed blade, and I believe it was a 3 blade. I'm trying to remember. I think it's a Grim Reaper. I think it's the Micro Hades is what they call that. And for this particular situation where you're not shooting a great distance, mountain lion up in a tree, I really wanted a clean pass through. I just figured, my a fixed blade was just going to minimize the variables of what could go on. So that's what I'm shooting right now. And if I do go out in a few weeks, it's probably what I'm still going to be shooting, just because I have a lot of confidence in the way my arrow flies with that broadhead. But yeah, yeah, that's the setup.
Awesome. So where can people follow along, or if they want to order some wilderness athlete, where or they want more information, like where can they figure that out?
Yeah, so our website's wildernessathlete.com. All of our products and everything you've ever want to find, articles on our products, information is all on our site. Our Instagram is just at wilderness_athlete. We share anything there that's just fun, cool stuff to look at on Instagram. We also do some cool product video stuff and product upload stuff there sometimes. But I think for anybody who ever has questions, if they're just not really sure where to start, we've got a lot of products, and it can be overwhelming. If you're not sure where to start, you've got a question about any one of our products, just email us. We've got incredible customer service, or you can call. We've got an incredible team of very knowledgeable people with all of our products, and we love helping customers. Like that's one of the things about our company that I'm very proud of, is just that we love genuinely working with people and helping people, and that's why we do this. So don't hesitate if you're kind of wondering, hey, which protein is the one I should go with, or what are the top 3 products I should be doing if this is my goal. Make it easier on yourself and just give us a call or shoot us an email, because we love to help. It's definitely not putting us out any. It helps us be better at our job in the long run too.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking the time, Kevin, and
Yeah.
I'll definitely be following along because I want to see some of that this yacht hunting that you speak of.
Oh yeah, yeah. That'll actually be an episode of the Western Hunter in I guess next season. It might make this season. I don't know, but yeah, you'll see it. Hopefully, it's fun to watch.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.